The waterfall step is where you have an accepted contract now. You might hear the term that you are under contract. And this is where three things start to happen simultaneously. You kick off your inspections, your financing, and your title escrow work. First, looking at the inspections. This is where you're going to have the home looked at. If you outline in your contract not to do inspections, well, you won't do them. But in most cases, you're going to want to have an inspection done. Typically, folks will hire a whole home inspector to go through the home, check all the light switches, outlets. If they're really good at knowing if there's a problem, they might not know the specific details, but like, hey, that just doesn't look right. And then they'll recommend you generally to a more specific person that can do things like, hey, I know that HVAC, something's looking wrong with it. It might be this piece or this piece. I recommend you get an HVAC tech here. They're really good at that. So you have the whole home inspected. And that's typically pretty quick. Your agent's going to generally, you get under contract, and they're like, all right, wonderful. Let's select our inspector, pick your inspector, schedule that timeout. You usually have 1 to 2 weeks to get that done. And if there's problems, in most scenarios, you have a chance to try to work with the sellers to get those settled. But remember, if it was super competitive, they might not want or care to do a whole lot to the home. If not, then you might have a chance to be able to get some things done and fixed on the home. So that's starting in one column. At the same time, your financing is really kicking off. Now, we love to make sure we get our pre-approvals up front and our pre-qualifications really sound, meaning got all your documents so we're in really good shape. So we don't have to bother you with so many questions when you're kicking off your inspections. But there's generally still things we have to get done. We got to order an appraisal for one. That is where we're going to essentially get your double check of value on the home. So that's where VA loans require appraisal. Conventional loans generally will require an appraisal so you can get a waiver for that. And we're going to have someone go out there and essentially do a more detailed analysis on the value. And they're generally good at the job, not always perfect, but in most cases, they're going to be able to help tell us what the value is, why the value is what it is, and give us a chance again to negotiate with the sellers if there's a major issue. So the appraisal is an important one to get rolling. And for VA loans specifically, it's important to get that one rolling very soon. We order that almost immediately unless there's a reason not to. And that's because you hear a lot of folks say, hey, it can take 45, 60 days to close a VA loan. That's nuts. It doesn't have to. One of the reasons why it can sometimes take so long is because that appraisal process. We order it as soon as possible once we have the contract and things are looking good. That way we can do fast closes, 30 days, less than 30 days, not a problem. The other thing we're going to do on that financing side is make sure we get our underwriting rolling. We got a lot of your documents up front, but now we might have some additional conditions. Big one, for example, is needing an updated insurance policy. Insurance is a big piece of this. You'll need to get that set up. We'll need to make sure we get the insurance now specific to the property. We can always give estimates up front, like when we're doing that pre-approval, but insurance and taxes are two of those things that are really heavily dependent on the specific property that you're purchasing. So keep that one in mind as we're going along. This is where you're going to want to make sure you get your insurance policy finalized. Now, for that whole lending process, that's generally about another 2-week period, sometimes 3 weeks if appraisal takes a little bit of time. So know that that part is going on simultaneously with the inspection period. Lastly, the title escrow work is going to kick off. Now, for you as a buyer, this doesn't take up a whole lot of your time, but just know that it is a whole nother process that's being done that's very important. Your biggest part will be upfront with the earnest money or good faith money. Different parts of the country call it slightly different things. This is where you're putting up funds with your contract to say, hey, seller, here's my offer, and here's a check attached with it that if we walk away for some reason outside of this contract, you can have it. Now, in some areas that's refundable, some areas that's not refundable. You're going to want to work with your agent to know what that's going to look like and how much of it is refundable or not refundable, depending on what conditions. Just know that that means, hey, you're putting money up front at the time of going under contract to show the seller in good faith that you're wanting to close this deal. That will typically be deposited with the title company. Sometimes it's an attorney, if it's an attorney state, or it even could be the real estate brokerage itself. But know that you're going to have to deal with that entity to make sure you get those funds deposited. The big part, though, for title or for an attorney's office, if your attorney state doing it, is they're going to make sure that the owners truly own the home and that there's a clear chain of title, meaning that the sellers truly owned it. And before that, it was all transferred okay. And now we're going to transfer it properly to you. Very important part. Last thing you want to do is make sure transfer title and someone else then comes back and says, we own the home. I bought the home. They're going to help make sure that one is taken care of. There's other videos that we'll have on title insurance, that kind of stuff, but just know title or attorney stays for attorney's sake, they are checking to make sure that one is in good shape to prepare it. That's anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks as well, that process. So all of this, that waterfall of those 3 things kicks off immediately. As we like to say, the first 2 weeks, you're going to feel bombarded with a lot of stuff. It's going to feel like, man, buying this house is a lot of work. You're going through the inspection, negotiating that, clearing up any financing items, getting your earnest money put in. But then once those pass, usually around week 2, things start calming down quite a bit, unless you have major inspection or appraisal issues. So I like to say, first 2 weeks, you're going to feel like you're really buying a house. The last 2 or 3 weeks before closing, whatever it is, until you close, you might wonder if you're buying a house at all, because then it's calmer, everyone's wrapping up their ends, and we're getting ready to close.